I saw the Odyssey about 12 hours ago now, and oh my god, am I itching to rewatch this thing. Before I get into this video, if you're new to the channel, which is most of you, or if you've watched my main channel, I don't really do reviews on media, so that isn't what this is. I'm not reviewing the Odyssey. I'm not gonna give it a score or anything. I truly am just gonna be yapping about this movie because I can't get it out of my head. So just a little warning so you know what you're in for. But anyway, going into the Odyssey, I didn't have huge expectations, and I feel like that's a smaller subsection of people for this movie because most of the reactions I've seen leading up to this thing were people either intensely hyped for it or making fun of everything they saw about it. I, for one, when I heard about the Odyssey being a thing, that Christopher Nolan was making it, I thought, that's cool. That's probably going to be a very visually cool movie to see because it's Chris Nolan. But the last couple Nolan movies have not really been my cup of tea. I've loved my fair share of Christopher Nolan movies. Inception, Memento, Interstellar, some of my favorite movies. But starting with Dunkirk, I felt like he was going in a direction that just wasn't for me anymore. Because even though I really enjoyed my theater experience with Dunkirk and thought it was a really amazing thing to see in the theater, I wasn't all too interested in the personal side of it, and it didn't leave a huge lasting impression on me other than those big scenes and set pieces were really cool. And I felt the same, but even more so with Oppenheimer. I truly probably wouldn't have even watched Oppenheimer if not for the whole Barbenheimer thing. That movie I honestly found intensely boring at times. Really cool subject matter to make a movie on, don't get me wrong. Some very cool stuff tackled in that movie, but god, the pacing and just how utterly slow it was at times. Not that my attention span is fried or anything, but I just could not get myself to care that much about what felt like these 20-minute long black and white segments of just people saying shit. All that to say, going into the Odyssey, I didn't really necessarily think it would be my thing. I was kind of unfamiliar with the subject matter too. I blame the American education system, but I was not forced to read the Odyssey in school. I did read Jason and the Argonauts, I believe, which I got confused with the Odyssey a lot because I really thought there was Medusa and some other stuff in this story. All I knew about the Odyssey is that it was a big influence on Western media and a lot of adventure stories, like the SpongeBob movie, obviously. But everything I saw about this movie, I just personally wasn't super interested. So I didn't get 70mm IMAX tickets a year ago when they went on sale because I didn't think I cared that much. And oh my god, I wish I did. I did end up seeing this thing in digital IMAX, which I believe you still get to see more than just a regular screen, just not as much as the 70mm shows you, and not as high definition. I'm still determined to rewatch it in 70mm, because that average digital IMAX experience was amazing. To get into the movie experience now, I felt things during this movie that I don't know the last time I felt watching a movie. I can remember times I felt it in games and albums semi-recently, a very specific feeling of just pure awe and utter amazement that what I'm watching is so not only expertly made, but resonates with me specifically and what I want to see so much in the story, the set pieces, the characters, everything. It was so well done. For example, the last game I felt this with was Clair Obscur, where I was just in total shock the whole time at how good every aspect of the media I'm consuming is. And there were so many scenes in this movie that were just giving me such an intense feeling of awe. Whereas when I saw how this movie was going to look visually before, I was so uninterested. I thought the visuals of this movie looked very bland and uninteresting. And I'm usually someone that tends to want a little more saturation in movies than they tend to put there, but I really underestimated this thing. After viewing the movie, it's so clear the direction he was going for and the kind of visuals he wanted to represent, where it's not trying to show some crazy mystical interpretation of this stuff that we've seen and could all kind of imagine in our heads and maybe think we want to see, but it goes in this way more grounded, realistic direction that makes a lot of sense for Nolan, since he does so many things in his movies where you're left wondering what actually occurred and what wasn't there. So with a story like this, where it's been passed down and retold and rewritten so many times, and you read it and wonder, what actually happened here, if anything? What did these people actually see that they thought was a Cyclops? And that was the most interesting aspect of the visuals and portrayal in this movie to me, that each scene, it felt like, as far as the movie goes, I believe this is actually happening, but it's also so grounded and presented in a way where this could be a vague misremembering of the story, a miscommunication as it's been passed down over and over. Like, one big example of this, and the part of the movie that really stood out to me, was when they go to Hades, which on the surface didn't seem super visually interesting. It's really just a black sand beach in Iceland. But having gone to Iceland before and hearing about the history and stories with Vikings in that area, you think about how these scenes looked and how easy it would be for the human imagination to think of some crazy things. So when they went to Hades and it was this big, vast black sand beach, you might think, oh, that's Hades? It's not like got fire and all that crap. But that depiction of it being a realistic kind of environment they might have gone to made it such an interesting interpretation to me. And just that whole scene with Elliot Page's character Sinon and Agamemnon, them speaking to Odysseus from beyond the grave. One of my favorite scenes I think I've seen in a movie ever. That, along with the Cyclops scene in its entirety, went on a lot longer than I thought it would, and had such an interesting emotional angle to the Cyclops where you kind of feel bad for him. He doesn't know any better, he's just hungry, and these little dudes came into his cave. And then the island with the giants, that was the one part I don't think I knew anything about from the original story, so I was really just like, what the hell is going on here? First there's these random ass suited up giant guys, and then the forest starts shifting around them, which also feels like a random story detail that could be misinterpreted when relaying this story so many times, where the surviving people got confused at how these other people got stuck in the trees. So they're like, yeah, the trees f***ing moved around us, it was crazy. And the entire scene involving the Trojan horse, oh my god. I don't know why, I've never thought about that idea in such a horrifying way, but it being presented with the details of someone that was inside there, so horrifying. People literally drowning as the tide comes in and they can't do anything about it. The fact that when they finally sneak out of the Trojan horse, once it's inside Troy, they're like stiff and can't walk because they've been in there for, I don't even remember how long, like a couple weeks. Each segment of this story was so interestingly presented. And when it first set off in portraying everything here, I was a little worried because it's a little confusing at first. And I was thinking, oh man, this whole movie is just going to jump back and forth, and I'm not going to understand what is now and then and the future. But that was only really a problem for 10 minutes. You kind of get a grasp on it really quick, and it all comes together in the end so perfectly, with the present day Tom Holland going out to search for his dad, the dad finally catching up to present day, and he gets there as that's currently happening. Chef's kiss. Two more things I want to talk about, and one of them is almost kind of a negative, and that is just how many huge actors are in this movie. I don't think this would be as much of a problem on a second viewing. When you're more acclimated to these actors being these characters, there were quite a few scenes in this movie where I was like, oh, there's Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson. Oh, hey, look, Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, Elliot Page. Oh, hey, Benny Safdie. It's a little jarring at times when you're trying to be fully immersed in this world. But that said, each of these actors gave some of the best performances of their career, like seriously. The only one I was a little teetering on whether I was fully on board or not was Tom Holland's I was a little iffy on him, but by the end, I was really digging his son character. Elliot Page, in the few scenes he had, was incredible. Same with Benny Safdie, saying like one sentence this whole movie and just f***ing standing there looking so menacing. The last thing I want to talk about is the whole ending and overall theme they went for. There's a big twist at the end of this movie that I did not expect. One of the kind of twists was that his men were straight up pillaging in Troy and just killing all of the civilians. Once they showed that, I thought, oh yeah, I guess that was kind of normal back then, to just kill civilians in war. So that was one big thing. And then that kind of leads up to the big reveal that Athena, who was portrayed by Zendaya, who's been guiding Odysseus this whole time, the person she's been portraying herself as was this girl that they executed in front of the Athena statue. Classic Nolan thing to end it on, because it really leaves you thinking, was she really Athena? Was she just his guilt following him around in his brain? Was she a god in disguise like they've been talking about this whole time with Zeus's law? Or was that really Athena and she just used the image of this girl to impact him more with his guilt of what he did? And it had way more of an Oppenheimer ending than I think anyone was expecting, with him kind of realizing that they've ruined Western civilization by taking advantage of this other city's trust with the whole Trojan horse, straight up massacring them. And so he goes off with his wife at the end to leave his kingdom and just sail into the west, and they just leave you with that in your mind. That whole angle on it, and the idea of Zeus's law being so important in this story, and them betraying that sacred trust that you have with other humans, really got rid of all of my issues with the past couple Christopher Nolan movies, where I just like couldn't connect to them very much. This one was so impactful on so many personal levels, and just like a human level, on top of so many interesting layers about storytelling and the evolution of stories. Oh my god, yeah, this might be an all-timer. Anyway, I feel like I yapped a lot. My throat is super dry. Let me know what you guys thought about the Odyssey. Any layers there that I missed? Thanks for watching. If you stuck around to the end of this one, you get a complimentary 2 bluster points. Bye.